Good afternoon, bonjour, buenas tardes. My name is José Antonio Rivas, Agriculture and Agri-Food Trade Commissioner at the Consulate General of Canada to Monterrey, Mexico. Je m'appelle José Antonio Rivas, délégué commercial du secteur de l'agriculture et agroalimentaire au Consulat Général du Canada à Monterrey, Mexique. We have 3 offices in Mexico: the Canadian Embassy in Mexico City, whose Agri-Food Trade Commissioner is Jennifer Rodriguez. My colleague Alejandro Ruiz, today's keynote speaker, is also at the Embassy of Canada, and he is Agri-Food Trade Commissioner working for market access and import regulations. And we also have an office in Guadalajara, whose Agri-Food Trade Commissioner is Juan Carlos Muñoz. Next slide, please. We represent the Trade Commissioner Service, part of Global Affairs Canada and the Government of Canada. We have over 120 years experience of assisting Canadian companies do business internationally and more than 160 offices worldwide to assist you. Next slide, please. The Trade Commissioner Service helps Canadian companies save time and money, finding new businesses and export opportunities, and identify qualified buyers, among other benefits. We thank you for participating in this webinar, and we invite you to use and benefit of our services. Now I will turn it over to my colleagues, Sonia Vieira and Felipe San Miguel at Export Development Canada.
Thanks, Jose Antonio. Alicia, can you hear me? I just want to make sure that the sound is coming in.
All good, Sonia.
Great, thank you. Thanks again, Jose Antonio. I just wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Sonia Vieira, and I'm a Global Trade Director for the consumer food sector within the Trade Connections team at Export Development Canada. And I'll pass it on to my colleague Felipe to introduce himself as well.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Felipe, and I'm in charge of the Monterrey office representing Export Development Canada here in Mexico. It's a great pleasure to be here with you.
All right, next slide, please. So thanks again. I just wanted to start off by thanking, the Trade Commissioner Service, Jose Antonio and Alejandro. I appreciate the efforts and the timeliness of this webinar and the partnership that we have with the Trade Commissioner Service and putting this great initiative together. So I have a very short presentation for you today. I'm going to talk a little bit about, who we are and the export support that EDC provides, as well as EDC's Business Connections program and how we help Canadian companies going abroad. So this slide here is just to give you a quick introduction of EDC and who we are. EDC is Canada's export credit agency. We are close partners with various stakeholders in Canada, like the Trade Commissioner Service, both in Mexico and around the world, provincial and federal partners of all sectors here in Canada as well. We're a financial crown corporation that's wholly owned by the Government of Canada. So what that means is that we operate at arm's length, and our mandate is derived from the government. We're financially self-sustained. We operate on commercial principles, and we benefit from the Government of Canada's AAA credit rating. And our mission is simply, we're here to very clearly help Canadian companies grow, and succeed in markets across the world. We have a representation across Canada. We have 22 offices that are located in all parts of the country. So if you're a Canadian exporter who's looking to access risk mitigation tools or understand a little bit more of how EDC can support you, there's a local contact for you pretty much wherever you're located across Canada. And in addition to that, we also have a global network and on-the-ground representation, such as Felipe, with 20 offices around the world who are mainly focused in key emerging markets. As for Mexico, we've taken a longer term view and certainly recognize the importance and, the strategic value it can provide to Canadian exporters. So we have offices in Mexico City and in Monterrey, and both of our representatives have been there for many years, and that's just one of the ways that we help facilitate business in the country. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary of the solutions that EDC provides. I am going to speak on the first two, and then my colleague Felipe will speak on the last two. On the knowledge side, this is what we call our export hub. It's a series of online resources that we have available on our website. It's free of charge. A lot of what this is designed to do is to help you on your early stages of research as you begin to explore opportunities in a new market. So I know there's a wealth of information there. You can find anything from market reports to webinars to EDC's country position overview. And I'm happy to share this link to the website after the webinar if you're interested in getting more information. The second one is connections, and this is actually the team that I work in. This is what we call our business connections program, and it's essentially how we connect Canadian suppliers to international buyers. And the way it works is that, we offer competitive financing to international companies that are committed to working with Canadian suppliers. And in turn, we help Canadian companies expand, into those markets, those global markets, by introducing them to high potential international buyers. So how we deliver? We have a global customer base. We have expertise that are on the ground who are there to build these relationships with these foreign contacts. We work with only a select number of international companies, and they're, who have been vetted in advance, just so that we know that there's a good fit for Canadian companies. Then we have, a unique team of sector experts. So this is actually the role that I'm in. So as I mentioned, I am the Global Trade Director for Consumer Food. So I specifically work in the food sector. And we have, global trade directors in all sectors. So it's basically a team of sector experts with the knowledge of, the Canadian capabilities, the innovation solutions, who will work closely with the buyers' procurement teams to understand their business, the challenges, their requirements, and in order to be able to match them with highly qualified Canadian suppliers, such as yourselves. And finally, I think this is one of the ways that we differentiate ourselves from other organizations or partners is that we provide a targeted approach. It's basically a customized business connections program that specifically meets the buyer's needs. So by collaborating with their business and procurement teams, we can leverage our knowledge, their relationships, to present them with tailored solutions and to essentially best make introductions to Canadian companies. So whether that's having them come to Canada for a matchmaking event, work along the margins of a trade show, conduct virtual meetings, especially during these challenging times, we've been doing quite a bit of those, and or even arranging, having Canadian suppliers meet the buyers in their home country. So I will leave it there, and I will pass it on to my colleague Felipe, who will talk about the insurance and financing solutions.
Thank you, Sonia. So just taking from that of the part of connections that you were mentioning, I'm going to jump right into financing and then go back to insurance. So I'm part of the team that gives support, and I have a portfolio of international companies, which then we match make with Canadian capabilities and companies in order to support our Canadian exporters to go beyond their borders and succeed internationally. And so that part of the program, it's the financing part that Sonia was mentioning about giving competitive financing to international companies. But as well, we have that part of being able to provide Canadian companies with different types of financing. And one can be exporter financing, where a Canadian company is funding in order to be able to perform their exporting activities. So there's that part as well. as the financing itself, like the way you can be able to move a product across borders and all that relationship into the financing side. So those would be the main financing aspects that we can provide. And as to the insurance part, well, we know that doing business outside Canada needs knowledge and needs to be secure for you. And so we have credit insurance to protect our Canadian exporters for contract risks, including the risk of non-payment, uh, as well as having the ability to do bonding guarantees. So that way we can allow to issue letters of credit of guarantees without you putting up the cash or credit from your banks as collateral. So that way we support you through the export process with the insurance or financing needed to be able to do this. And without further ado, I'll have to pass it along to Alejandro so we can start our main event. Thank you.
Yes, hello to everyone. First of all, I would like to do a quick sound check. So, Alicia, could you please confirm if you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you, Alejandro.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will start then. It is a pleasure to participate in this webinar. Today, I am going to speak you about some changes that are coming up to the labeling regulations for retail foods and non-alcoholic beverages, which are part of the Mexican official standard NOM 51, and also about the process for shipping samples to Mexico. So thank you very much for attending this webinar, and if we can please continue to the next slide. Okay, so here is just a short biography of myself. I am a trade commissioner for Agri-Food at the Canadian Embassy in Mexico. Before joining the embassy, I worked for the International Division at the Mexican Ministry of Agriculture. As part of my duties, I monitor any changes to the Mexican regulatory framework related to agri-food imports. I also serve as liaison with the Mexican authorities to resolve market access issues affecting Canadian exports and provide advice to Canadian exporters about compliance with the Mexican import regulations, among other duties. Based on this work, I have achieved an extensive knowledge and experience in agri-food, international business, Mexican regulations, and customs procedures. So just a little bit of background, and now I will proceed with the presentation. So next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so one of the main topics of this presentation is a recent amendment to the Mexican official standard NOM 51, which regulates the labeling of the prepackaged foods and non-alcoholic beverages that are going to be sold at retail stores in Mexico. This is a very important amendment, and this is why we are organizing this webinar so that Canadian companies are aware of the main changes and start making adjustments to properly comply with the new changes. These labeling changes are mandatory for both domestic and imported products. And the main objective of these changes are to encourage Mexicans to adopt a healthier diet and fight diseases such as obesity and diabetes. As you may know, Mexico is one of the countries with the highest rates of these diseases, obesity and diabetes. Therefore, the Mexican government is trying to encourage a healthier eating, consumption, and diet in order to fight these diseases. And this is one of the basic principles of this amendment. Now, the amendment to the standard was completed on March 27, 2020. And it's going to be implemented in 3 different stages. These are listed in the slide, as you can see. The first stage would start on October 1st, 2020, and would last 3 years until September 30, 2023. It is important to mention that during this first stage, there are major changes in the labeling conditions that I will explain further. So companies will need to start adapting their labels as soon as possible to be prepared for this first stage coming up very quickly on October 1st. The second stage of implementation will be from October 1st, 2023 to September 30, 2025, and will last 2 years. And the final and last stage will start on October 1st, 2025 onward. So let's see which are some of these main labeling changes. Please go to the next slide. Thank you. So, first of all, it's very important for you to know that any non-compliant products are expected to be removed from the Mexican shelves at the retail stores as of October 1st, 2020, or not allowed to be sold in Mexico. This is why it's very important for Canadian exporters that are already doing business in Mexico or that want to do business in Mexico in the near future to start preparing their labels according to this latest amendment to the standard. Companies are strongly advised to work with their Mexican importers and or with private verification units authorized by the Mexican government to certify that the labels of the products comply with the new NOM 51. In the link that is included in this slide, you can actually consult the list of existing verification units that are currently authorized by the Mexican government and that can help companies to make sure that their labels are compliant with the standard. Following, I'm going to explain a summary of some of the key labeling changes. However, companies are advised to review carefully all the changes in the full text of the amendment to NOM 51. The full text can be consulted in the link that is provided as well in the slide. Thank you. Can we move to the next one, please? Okay, so let's start reviewing some of these main changes, okay? One of the main changes is a new front of package warning black seal, and I will explain this. As of October 1st, 2020, black octagonal shaped warning seals with the word excess, as you see in the slide, will be required to appear in the front of package of foods and non-alcoholic beverages that exceed pre-established thresholds of fat, sodium, calories, and sugar in order to alert consumers about what is considered an excessive content of these components. These particular components are of high concern for the Mexican government, and therefore that's why there is a focus on these components in the black seal. The warning black seals must be included as many as applicable from 1 up to 5 following the order that is presented in the slide, starting with excess calories, excess sugars, excess saturated fat, and excess sodium. In the case of products that have a small front of package equal or less than 40 square centimeters, these should only include one single seal indicating the number of components in excessive amounts as indicated in the slide. So 1 seal, 2 seals, 3 seals, 4 seals, 5 seals, however, and the number of seals that apply in this case. Thank you. Can we move to the next one, please? We can see in the next slide some details about the size and the font type for the seals, which are available in the amendment to NOM 51. Okay, all of these details are included in the full text of the NOM. Therefore, you are strongly advised to check the full text for these details. Here we can see some examples of how the warning seals would look when more than one seal is required. And you can see examples of 2 seals, 3 seals, 4 seals, 5 seals, etc., depending on the component included in the product. Okay, if we can move to the next one, please. We can see that according to the amendment to NOM 51, the warning black seals will be required to appear in the Sorry, I think I got cut for a minute, but you can see that the warning black seals, again, should appear on the upper right corner of the front of package, except for products with a front of package that is smaller than 60 square centimeters. In this case, the seals would be allowed to appear in any part of the front of package. So you can see some examples in this slide. Also, it is important to mention that there are certain products that are exempted from these black warning seals. These products are single ingredient products such as vegetable oils, animal fats, sugar, honey, salt, and cereal flour, among others. The full list of products is included in the text of the standard. Can we please move to the next one? Thanks. Now, these black octagonal seals are going to be placed depending on certain thresholds of the components that I mentioned. If the components fall within these tables that I present in the slide, then the products would be required to include the black warning seal. Now, some of these thresholds become stricter from one stage to the other, okay? So that's important to consider. In this slide, we can see the thresholds that will apply for the first stage. So you can see that they are divided by solid in 100-gram amount of product and liquids in 100 milliliters of product. So the first component that you can see in the column is energy, okay? So for those products that are solid and that have 275 total calories or more in the product of energy, then the legend that is at the bottom would have to be included in the warning seal, which says excess of calories, okay? The same in the case of liquids, you will see that liquids that have 70 or more calories or 10 calories or more of free sugars, in the case of energy, will need to include the warning seal indicating excess of calories. You can see the different thresholds that apply in the table, and I circled in red the ones that are going to become stricter in the next stage, okay, as we will see in the following slide. One of them, as you can see, is sodium. In the case of solids and liquids, during the first stage, those products that have a sodium content equal or higher than 350 milligrams will be required to include the warning seal saying excess of sodium. But these thresholds are going to become stricter, as we will see in the next slide, please. Thank you. So in this slide, we can see the thresholds that are going to apply during the stage 2 that starts on October 1st, 2023. And as you can see, I indicated in yellow, in the case of liquids, the threshold for energy will become stricter. So products that have 8 calories or more of free sugars in the product will be required to indicate the warning seal saying excess of calories. The same will apply for products that have a sodium content of 1 milligram or more of sodium, or 300 or more milligrams of sodium. In that case, the products will be required to include the warning seal saying excess of sodium. So as you can see, among the different stages, the thresholds become stricter. And the idea behind this, we understand, is that the government would encourage some companies to modify their formulas and the components in their products so that they are not required to include the octagonal black sign and warning. So that's the idea of this becoming stricter. Going to the next slide, we can see the table of thresholds that will apply in the third and final stage that starts on October 1st, 2025 onward. At this point, all the different provisions and sections of the standard will be fully implemented. So it's very important that you review in detail all of these provisions to make sure that you adjust your labels accordingly. Okay, if we can move please to the next one. Here, I am showing you just an example of how the new front of package will look like. On the left side, we have an example of the new label, including the black octagonal warning seals, as you can see. And on the right hand, you can see an example of an old label according to the front of package indicating the percentages of fat, sugar, sodium, energy as it is required right now. But remember that as of October 1st of this year, this is going to change and the new black octagonal seals will start applying. Thank you. We can go to the next one, please. Now, the black octagonal warning seals are not the only changes in NOM 51. There are other changes as well, including cautionary legends on caffeine and sweeteners. So as of October 1st, rectangular shaped cautionary legends must also be used when applicable, of course, with the following text and using the following format and legend. So for example, for those products that contain sweeteners, the labels will be required to include this rectangular shaped legend saying contains sweeteners not recommended for children. Contiene edulcorantes no recomendable en niños. For products that contain caffeine, the following legend would be required that says contains caffeine, avoid in children. Contiene cafeína, evitar en niños. So those are other changes that are important for you to remember. These cautionary legends will be required to be placed below the black warning seals when applicable. Can we move to the next one, please? Okay. Now, it's important to mention that according to the standard, stickers with the warning black seals and or the cautionary legends that I just described would be allowed temporarily on top of the current labels until March 31st, 2021. After this date, the stickers cannot be placed on top of other labels as indicated in the standard. So for now, companies are going to be allowed to use these stickers and put it on top of those labels. But after the date that I mentioned, March 31st, these cannot be on top of other labels, okay? These have to be placed on their own in the package. Now, products with octagonal warning seals or cautionary legends will be allowed to also include a laying saying this product does not contain warning seals or legends. And this will apply in those cases where products do not fall under the thresholds that I explained and are not required to include warning seals or cautionary legends in the package. Okay, can we move to the next one, please? Thank you. Now, other changes or new provisions included in the amendment to the standard are that as of April 1st, 2021, the following changes will also apply. First of all, no cartoons, celebrities, or athletes will be permitted on the labels of products that have one or more octagonal warning signs. Again, this is a measure to discourage children, especially, to consume products that have a high content of sugar, of fats, of calories. Another change is that endorsement of products by organizations or associations will only be allowed if proper scientific documentation is presented and the products do not exceed one or more octagonal warning signs. Substitute products, as part of the changes, will be required to include the word imitation, imitación in Spanish, in capital letters and bold before the name of the product. That's another change to consider. Trans fats would also be required to be declared in the labels, not including trans fats that are present in dairy or meat ingredients in a natural state. Finally, another change is that added sugars must be declared in the list of ingredients as azúcares añadidos. If we move to the next slide, please. We can continue to see some other changes. For example, the list of allergens that must be declared has been extended to include additional products, such as mollusks, for example. In the case of food products with the possibility of cross-contamination of allergens, the following legend would need to be included may contain or puede contener these allergens. In the case of imported products, the following labeling would also be allowed: fabricado or envasado para, produced or bottled for, followed by the name and address of the importer. Also, the name of the product will be required to appear in bold in the main exhibition surface of the product, and health and nutritional claims would be allowed in products that have octagonal black seals, but under special conditions. All of these provisions that I just explained will become effective as of April 1st, 2021. Okay, can we move to the next one, please? Thank you. Now, here I just wanted to show you some of the existing provisions that are already in place and that will remain in place in the future and when the amendment comes into effect. So right now, the labels of food products sold in Mexico most include mandatory information in Spanish that includes the product name and description, the list of ingredients, nutritional information, preservation legend, expiration date and lot number, the country of origin, net content, and the information of the exporter and the importer, among other elements. Also, there are other labeling standards or norms for specific products like bakery, chocolate, alcoholic beverages, etc., that complement NOM 51. So it's very important for you to make sure that your products comply with the different applicable standards. Next one, please. So some final suggestions with respect to the amendment to NOM 51. First of all, the embassy. We can provide you general guidance about the amendment to NOM 51. However, given the level of detail of the new labeling requirements, Canadian exporters are strongly encouraged to work with Mexican authorized verification units, which we saw at the beginning of the presentation, to ensure that the labels are compliant with the new NOM 51. Once the label is approved by the verification unit, it would issue a compliance certificate which can be presented when the products arrive at the Mexican border in order to facilitate the inspection and the import process. So it's very recommendable to work with one of these private verification units. If we can move to the next one, please. Okay, moving on, I'm gonna talk about shipping samples to Mexico. We know that there are a lot of questions around shipping samples, so I will provide some background information. As general consideration, you need to be aware that courier companies usually do not offer customs clearance services. Therefore, exporters will need an experienced Mexican customs broker that can help them with the customs clearance of their samples. The embassy can provide a list of experienced Mexican customs brokers if that can help with the customs clearance process. A close communication between the exporter and the customs broker is essential with respect to the necessary paperwork and how the samples need to be prepared and sent to Mexico. Next one, please. So in this slide, I show you quickly some of the paperwork and other requirements that would apply when shipping samples to Mexico. First of all, you need to know that the Mexican regulations that apply to imports of samples are quite similar than the regulations that are applied to regular commercial shipments. The samples will need a certain set of paperwork and information. First, let's talk about labeling exemption. In this case, when you're shipping samples, they are not intended to be sold. Therefore, the customs broker that is going to handle the import process can present a letter to the Mexican authorities explaining that the samples are only for exhibition purposes, not to be sold, and asking the products to be exempted from the labeling standards, such as the NOM 51 that I just explained. Now, the samples would also need to come with an invoice showing that they do not have a commercial value. Usually, the invoice is required to show a value of $1 US, but you will have to confirm this with your customs broker and how the invoice should be prepared. Then, for certain products, especially for non-processed products that contain meat, dairy, grains, plant products, these would in some cases be required to comply with certain sanitary import conditions, which would be endorsed by sanitary export certificates issued by the competent authority in Canada. Again, you need to confirm with your customs broker if the product is subject to any specific sanitary requirements and how to comply with them. The samples would also need to come with a certificate of origin. And the purpose of this is to endorse that the products are originally from Canada, in this case, and they are exempted from paying any import duties under NAFTA. Finally, it's very important for you to ask your customs broker how the packages should be marked or prepared. For example, if you should put a label or a sign indicating that the products are just samples, and also what HS code to be used. But again, you need to follow very closely the instructions that are given to you by the Mexican customs broker that you use. If you need a list of Mexican customs broker, we at the embassy would be happy to facilitate that as well to you. If we move to the next one, please. Well, thank you very much. That would finish my presentation today. And now I will turn it back to Sonia for the question and answer session. In any case, if you have any follow-up questions, you can contact me as well by email afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alejandro. That was extremely informative, and I think we can all agree, everybody on this call can agree that it was very helpful. So thank you so much. So now, as Alejandro mentioned, we're now in the Q&A portion of the webinar, and I wanted to remind everybody on the call, especially those who may have arrived a bit late, to please submit your questions to the Q&A coordinator that you will see listed on the right-hand side of the dialog box. You can submit your questions there. Everybody's line is on mute, so we're going to be receiving those questions by dialogue, and I'm going to be reading them out, and then whether it'll be Alejandro or Jose Antonio will be able to answer the questions depending on what your question is. So I will start with the first one. Alejandro, I believe this one will be for you. Are seed products exempt from the new labeling standards?
Yes. Thank you, Sonia. Well, as I mentioned during the presentation, there are certain products that are certainly exempted from the new standards, and specifically from the octagonal warning seals, the black warning seals that I mentioned. So some of these products include animal fat, sugar, honey, salt, cereal flours, etc. So you need to check the standard closely in order to see if the seeds would be exempted or not. But also you need to check if the seeds would fall or not within the thresholds that are established in terms of calories, sugar, fats, sodium, etc. So this is also important that you first check if the products would fall under those conditions, if they are above those thresholds or not, and also check the list of exempted products. So we'll have to check carefully. We can follow up on that, but we will need to know the exact components of the product in order to know if it would be exempted or not. If you send me an email with the details, I can help you to determine if this would apply or not.
Right, thanks, Alejandro. Okay, next question. Do we need to leave the white rectangle behind the seals?
Okay, the white rectangle, let me see. Yes, as you see the black warning seal in the presentation, as you can see the examples that I included, this is exactly how the seal should be presented according to the document that is in place. So my advice is that you check the full text of the standard in order to see the size of the shape, the font that you would need to use, but that white line around the octagonal shape is included as part of the document. So my understanding is that that's exactly how it would have to appear in the package.
Okay, thanks, Alejandro. Okay, next question. Again, this is for you, Alejandro. Do we have time to use our old packaging, or do we have to conform by October 1st, 2020?
No, you will have to conform by October 1st, 2020 at the provisions that are going to start to be applied as of that date. Some of these provisions that I mentioned is the octagonal black warning seals. That's something that will be implemented as of that date. So your product will have to comply with that as of October 1st. That's why it's very important that you start working right away to make sure that your labels will be compliant as of that date. And there are other provisions that will start applying as of that date, as I explained. For example, the legends related to caffeine or sweeteners in the product. That will start to apply as of October 1st as well. There are other provisions that will become effective afterwards. For example, as of April 1st, 2021. But again, the advice is you need to start working right now because some of the major changes are actually coming up on October 1st.
Okay. I've seen some questions about if this presentation is going to be sent out post-meeting and if you're going to be receiving a copy of this webinar. So just to remind everybody that yes, the PowerPoint presentation will be sent out in a follow-up email to all the participants. And this webinar has also been recorded, and we're going to be sending out the link to everyone, especially those who weren't able to actually join today. So that will be coming. Okay, so I just want to remind everybody we still have a few minutes. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them to Q&A. As of now, we don't have any new ones. So I'll just probably give it another minute or two and wait for if more people want to submit some questions. Okay, I see some coming in. Okay, so this one is a pretty long one. Commodities as lentils, canary seeds, chickpeas that are sold both bulk and in bags of 100 pounds will also need this new label. Are these commodities excluded because they are one single ingredient?
Yes, that's a very good question. We need to keep in mind, okay, that this labeling standard only applies for prepackaged foods and beverages that are intended for retail sale. So if your products are in bulk, are shipped in bulk, and are intended to be further processed or are going to be sold at a wholesale level in a Central de Abastos, a wholesale market, and are not intended for direct retail sale, then these conditions will not apply to the product. There are other labeling conditions which are much more flexible and easier that would apply in that case. But this only applies for prepackaged foods and beverages intended for retail sale. So it's very important to make that difference. And in this case, bulk products or shipped in bulk would not be subject to these conditions.
All right, thanks, Alejandro. Next question. Can you define what is free sugars?
Free sugars. Yes. We will have to go back to the full text of the standard for a definition of free sugars, because there is one in there. But let me see, just a second, please. I'm checking the standard right now, and it mentions, in terms of free sugars, so in terms of free sugars, the definition that is included in the standard says, okay, sugars, available sugar that are added to the food products or the non-alcoholic beverages by the manufacturer, plus those sugars that are already naturally present in the products, such as in honey, in juices of fruits and vegetables, in syrups, etc. So this is the definition included in the standard. But again, my advice is to go to the text, check it very closely, and work with a verification unit to make sure that if your product would fall or not under that classification or threshold that I explained, and if it would be required or not to include the octagonal warning seals.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Does natural occurring trans fat need to be added to the nutrition fact panel, or they must be omitted because it's naturally occurring?
Yes, thank you. That's another good question. And yes, there is a provision about naturally occurring fats, and the text of the NOM mentions that when we talk about trans fats, for example, it does not consider the trans fats that are present in dairy or meat ingredients in a natural state. In other words, the text of the standard appears to make a difference between those fats that are considered and included naturally as part of an ingredient of the product, and those fats that are added or included in the product during the manufacturing process. So again, I would tell you that the best is to look at the specific product, the specific example, analyze very well the constitution of the fat, and then determine if it would fall or not in the provisions of the standard. But we will need to check in detail the constitution of the fat in order to provide a final answer on that.
All right, thank you. I think we have time maybe for one or maybe two more. Can you confirm if added sugar needs to be grouped in the ingredient list, or if they can appear in order of predominance in the list?
No, according to the text of the standard, added sugar needs to be declared in the list of ingredients by itself. And the text of the standard says that you would need to say azúcares añadidos and include that as part of the list of ingredients. That is what the text of the standard mentions. But again, it's very important to look at the specific case and then determine which are the provisions that would apply to the specific product.
Okay, thanks, Alejandro. Okay, I think we'll just have one more question and then we'll close off the webinar. So last question, is edible oil such as canola oil exempt from the new labeling standards?
Yes, it is. It is our understanding that it would be exempted from the use of the black warning black seals because vegetable oils is among the products that are listed in the standard of exempted products from complying with the black warning seals as part of the amendment to NOM 51. You can check that in the full text of the NOM 51, but canola oil would fall under vegetable oils and therefore would be part of this list of exempted products.
Okay, thanks, Alejandro. That's all we have for questions, but if you have some questions that weren't answered today, or if you actually think of new ones later on, we will ensure to share our contact information from all the panelists on the webinar today. So we will be sharing that with you on a follow-up email, along with, as mentioned earlier, the link to the recorded version of the webinar, as well as the PowerPoint presentation. So thank you so much. And I will pass it on to Jose Antonio, who's going to provide closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Sonia. We definitely believe that new labeling regulations on food products and non-alcoholic beverages and sample shipments are definitely an essential part of a successful export plan to Mexico. So we are very glad that you were able to join us today. And we are most grateful to our keynote speaker, Alejandro Ruiz, Trade Commissioner for Market Access and Import Regulations at the Embassy of Canada to Mexico City, for his outstanding and clear presentation. On behalf of Export Development Canada and the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service, we thank you very much for having participated in this webinar. Merci à tous pour avoir participé à cet webinaire. Thanks to all of you for having participated in this webinar. Gracias a todos por haber participado en este webinar. Bonne journée, good afternoon, buenas tardes.